Welcome to Mula Matters with Ina. I invited my colleague, Vukosi Moluleke, to join us today to discuss what happened in the business world this year. Welcome, Vukosi.
Thanks, Ina. Looking forward to our conversation.
After the last of the lockdowns were suspended and life seemed to return to normal, we were looking forward to a more normal year. We thought that food prices had stabilized after the sharp increases following the war in Ukraine, that the economy would grow a bit more in 2023, and that interest rates would not increase anymore. But we had a surprise waiting for us. 2023 was not a normal year at all. What do you think, Vukosi?
You're right, Ina. Absolutely. It was a very challenging year with global supply chain problems seeming to be resolved, and also fuel prices also seem to stabilize. A year ago, I thought now we must just tackle climate change. Unfortunately, 2023 had a few surprises up its sleeves, and they were clearly not good ones.
Just look at inflation. In 2022, inflation hit its highest level in 13 years, with an average inflation rate for the year of 6.9%. In January, inflation decreased to 6.9% from 7.2% in December. Then back to 7% in February and even to 7.1% in March. Then it slowed to 6.8% and even further to 6.3% in May, and even more to 5.4% in June and 4.7% even in July. Then, just as we thought the worst was over, inflation increased to 4.8% in August and then jumped to 5.4% in September. Luckily, after the 3-month upswing, inflation cooled to 5.5% in November. What a roller coaster ride! And inflation is important for the repo rating, of course.
Yes, that's the thing. The South African Reserve Bank has the constitutional mandate to protect the value of the rand by keeping inflation low and steady, right? So it uses interest rates to influence the level of inflation. National Treasury sets the inflation target in consultation with the Reserve Bank to act as a benchmark to measure price stability. Now, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Reserve Bank independently makes monetary policy to achieve this target that is currently between 3 and 6%. It's important that inflation stays close to the midpoint of 4.5% for the repo rate, and therefore interest rates to come down, since they've been on an upwards trajectory since November 2021. Could you perhaps shed some light as to how we got here?
Well, because the interest rates started to increase in November 2021 when it was 3.75%. There has been no decrease in the repo rate since. We started this year on a repo rate of 7%, and this soon became 7.25% after a 25 basis points increase in January. But I don't think we were prepared for the 50 basis point shock in March that saw the repo rate go to 7.75%. And then another 50 basis points in May to bring the repo rate to 8.25%, where it has since stayed. And credit stress reports show that people who are used to were used to low interest rates leading up to the first increase in November 2021. And they went and they bought houses and cars, and now they battle to repay them because of the increases in the interest rates. But then also, what about people who cannot even afford houses or cars and who have to feed their families on very small incomes?
Absolutely. It's a tough time for everyone, Ina, especially low-income earners. And data from the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group backs that up. The organization, which conducts monthly surveys of food prices for a family of 4 across shops and butcheries in areas where low-income consumers typically shop, reveals some interesting patterns. Now, the data shows that the household basket cost 5,314.63 in November. This is 478 rands point 67 cents more than the 4,835 and 96 cents in November last year. This is partly thanks to the shortage of chicken and eggs that low-income consumers generally use as a primary source of protein. Now, the shortage is due to the outbreak of the avian flu, which led to poultry farmers having to cull millions of chickens to contain the virus.
Yeah, and people are really struggling no matter how much they earn. Even the Reserve Bank said this week that South African households are increasingly less well off. Their finances and net wealth are deteriorating while debt is becoming more expensive. And personal disposable income declined by a relatively sharp 2.9% so far this year, while inflation continued to outpace wage and salary increases and eroded real incomes. And what made things even worse for households was that the cost of servicing their debt increased further at the same time, consuming 8.9% of their disposable income, up from 8.8% in the second quarter, which primarily reflected the impact of sharply higher interest rates.
Well, that's maybe why South Africa's festive season consumer confidence level was the lowest in 2 decades, showing how low the country's consumers are on festive cheer, with the FNB/BAR Consumer Confidence Index decreasing further to reach -17 in the fourth quarter of the year. Now, the index for the fourth quarter is even below the reading of -12 recorded during the fourth quarter in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic, suggesting that consumers will keep tight control over their purse strings during the holiday season, which should worry retailers of expensive luxury goods in particular.
Yeah, consumers learned a few hard lessons in 2023, and the most important one is about debt and using credit. Consumers are battling to pay their home loans and credit cards, and lenders are tightening their requirements to qualify for credit cards or personal loans in response. It is especially significant that it is people who can afford to buy a house or who qualify for a credit card who are now unable to repay their installments. And this, for me, just shows that consumers continue to battle with the rising cost of living and low economic growth. According to the Experian Consumer Default Index, for the third quarter, there was a significant increase in consumer debt default compared to the third quarter of 2022, from 3.69 to 4.88, or 32%, indicating that consumers increasingly struggle to meet their debt obligations amid the rising cost of living crisis. That must also be why so many consumers are interested in the two-pot retirement system, Vikosi.
Absolutely, and I think so. And that is why they were so taken aback when Treasury asked to move the implementation date from the 1st of March 2024 to the 1st of March 2025 by a year, meaning they would have to wait even longer for the opportunity to use some of those retirement savings to get them out of their financial troubles. But now Treasury agreed with the Portfolio Committee to implement the two-pot retirement system a little bit earlier on the 1st of September 2024. Now, the system will divide members' contributions into 2 clear categories. 2/3 will go towards mandatory savings, retirement savings, while 1/3 will be designated for a savings pot, offering the option of annual withdrawals to help with unforeseen financial challenges. But if you're unemployed, you'll not even have a pension to draw on. And, our unemployment figures are very low. They're not that great, are they?
Employment, or rather unemployment, is a major problem in South Africa. While Stats South Africa's quarterly employment statistics for the third quarter shows that 31,000 jobs were added from July to September, bringing the level of unemployment in South Africa to 10,176,000. We must keep in mind that only 256,000 jobs were added between September last year and September this year. And the latest data from Statistics South Africa shows that our official unemployment rate declined by only 0.7 percentage points, from 32.6% in the second quarter to 31.9% in the third quarter of the year. I think South Africa's employment rate remains far too high and has not declined sufficiently from the pandemic peak of 35.3% reached at the end of 2021. And then we cannot talk of employing more people if the economy doesn't grow. Because our latest gross domestic product figures are also not great.
Not so great, Ina. Economists said that the decrease in economic growth of 0.2% for the third quarter did not come as a surprise. Although it was worse than expected after 2 consecutive quarters of growth, what was surprising was the nosedive of agriculture, though. It contracted by 9.6%, and one economist called it a stop-and-go economy, undermined by numerous supply-side constraints, while an increasingly onerous business environment erodes profitability. Data releases over the next few weeks will show if the economy might enter a recession in the fourth quarter, but it is still too early to say. Economists think it is certainly possible as port congestion and load shedding have worsened considerably. Now, this makes me wonder, is that why business confidence is also falling?
Indeed. Business confidence slipped again in the fourth quarter due to sentiment among new car dealers, declining by a huge 24 points, outweighing the 50-point increase in retail confidence. This shows that the business environment remained difficult as business conditions deteriorated against expectations. The RMBB, Business Confidence Index, slipped by 2 points to 31 in the fourth quarter of 2023. This means that less than a third of respondents were satisfied with prevailing business conditions. The most positive development was the 15-point surge in confidence among respondents in the retail sector. After 2 straight declines in the first and the second quarters of the year, confidence recovered through the second half to end the year at 47 index points, equal to the average reading in 2022. However, the underlying survey results warrant some caution as overall sales volume slowed, with non-durable retailers reporting the steepest decline. Some non-durable goods had steep price increases lately, which tends to depress volume growth. Business confidence for other services also decreased by 6 points to 42 in the fourth quarter, which implies that almost 6 out of 10 respondents are dissatisfied with prevailing business conditions. This decline in confidence comes after a slight increase in confidence in the third quarter. Hotels, restaurants, transport, real estate, and business services make up these other services that I talk about and fall under other services to distinguish them from the retail, wholesale, and motor trade sectors. Well, we did not solve all the country's financial problems today, Vukosi, but at least we know that consumers are seeing the challenges and rising to meet them. Vukosi, let's go and see what 2024 holds for us.
All right, let's see.